So this is our first road trip to California. And we put out on our last podcast and said, who should we interview when we come over here? And about 3 or 4 people, I think 3 people commented in the YouTube comments saying, Paul van der Klee, you should check him out. And then a couple of people emailed me separately to say, go and check out Paul. So our audience has brought us together. And I'd love to know, I mean, we're in your, is this the Sunday school?
This is the nursery.
Yeah, hence the giraffes behind you and the camels behind me. Just getting that out of the way now. So Paul, I'd love to hear, like, where are we? Who are you? And why? What's brought us together?
Well, my name is Paul van der Klee, and I'm the pastor of Living Stones Christian Reformed Church here in Sacramento, California. What's brought us together is Jordan Peterson. About 6-7 months ago, I'd been following Jordan Peterson for about a year, and I'd been blogging about him. I've had a blog for years. And at some point, I was reading Neil Postman's, rereading the book I'd read in the 80s, Amusing Ourselves to Death, which talks about media and the way it changes message and shapes message and empowers message. And I thought, well, I should probably do a video about Jordan Peterson. And I made a couple of them, and I had 15 subscribers on my YouTube channel where I was doing a show with Freddie Schuler, who you probably met this morning, just something because he wanted to do a TV show with me. And that's all I had done, and then suddenly there were more people watching my channel. And I began getting letters from people talking about how helpful my commentary had been for them to understand Jordan Peterson and frame him within a Christian context. So I kept doing it, and I've continued to do it since then. And I've watched many of your videos and very much appreciated them. So here we are. It's quite a surprise to me.
Yeah, because I guess my journey with Jordan Peterson as well started probably about a year ago. I first heard him, wrote a blog about him, and then luckily got to interview him in Toronto. And since then, like I have a sense like that there's Jordan Peterson himself, and then there's what he represents. And for me, what I think he represents is a kind of potential for the reintegration of a Christian tradition that I think the materialist world has kind of lost, and potentially a kind of reintegration of the sacred itself, which is what I think I saw when I first saw him. I was like, wow, this is such a vital message for the times. And you're coming from, I guess, a very different place in terms of you live in that sacred world, you live in that Christian world. So what does he represent to you?
Well, the first thing I saw was Christians read this book that says we live under a dome, and God is up and the world is down and there's people under the world. They live in that space during church, and then they go out into the world and we're on a globe and we're flying through space. And when I listen to Jordan Peterson, churches always talk about God coming from above. And that right now is getting nowhere with huge groups of people. And here Jordan Peterson was coming from below, and he's trying to connect heaven and earth again, which is where why the conversation always goes back to the physical nature of the resurrection. So I watched this and I thought, and then I listened to a lot of people watching him saying, I'm interested in going to church and I'm interested in exploring this. And it was very clear Jordan Peterson was rocketing up the hierarchy, and not everybody was going to get a chance to sit down and talk to him. And well, I'm available. And so they find me. And so then as a Christian minister,
So you're a proxy.
So I'm a proxy, that's right. I'm way down at the low end of the feeding chain, which is okay by me. I pastor a small church, I like small things. What's exciting about it is we get to do what we're doing now, sitting, talking face to face. This is what I enjoy.
Yeah. Lots of things to pick up on. You remind me, when you talk about sort of Peterson, talking about the bottom-up nature of, I guess, the bottom-up nature of religion and religious revelation, you might say. There's an echo of his conversation with Ben Shapiro. When Ben Shapiro was talking about, like, he's obviously very into the kind of Jewish revelation and the biblical stories being true, and Peterson was saying, yes, but you can also get there another way. There's some sense in that the revelation from below, like evolved morality and the psychological reality of the stories, like a very human level, also matches this sort of revelation from above of this is somehow divinely, like I guess in history it would have been, these have come from God. It's sort of it's a sense of them both coming together in some sense.
Very much so. John Calvin, so I'm a Calvinist pastor, calls the sensus divinitatis, which says that God has built into us a way to hear him. I hadn't heard someone making a compelling case like this that was actually getting traction with people. And it was clear Peterson was getting traction. And so then I said, I've got to listen to this guy. I've got to figure out what he's saying and why it's working and how I should respond to what's happening around him.
And just to come back to tell me a bit more. You're a pastor. Tell me about the community and kind of what's your day-to-day life look like?
Well, the community is an outrageously diverse, struggling community. This would be a poor section of Sacramento. There are a lot of group homes where there are people who are on permanent disability for mental illness. There's a fair amount of drugs, homelessness. We didn't have any homeless people or untreated schizophrenics in church this morning, but that's fairly common for us here. How can we pray for each other this morning? Day to day is dealing with that community to a degree. It's working with my congregation, talking to people who come to me. And so the Peterson stuff kind of fit in, except people are coming to me now via YouTube or via emails or comments, and I'm engaging in conversation with them. It's a small congregation, which gives me the opportunity to do what we're doing today.
And you started putting out commentaries on Peterson. You found like a lot of people following on YouTube. How's that been, kind of going from this small community of what we had 20 or 30 people in church before to kind of potentially a global audience, or at least being contacted by people around the world? How's that been?
Well, it scared me to death when it first started because in 2 weeks I had 1,000, 1,500 people listening to what I was saying, and I thought, well, this can't keep at this pace because that would destroy what I've been building here for a long time. Eventually it tapered off, and I've learned that it's been at a manageable pace, and so I can both take care of my congregation and interact with people, and that's what I like.